English translation 494th contact, Tuesday 11th May 2010, 22:59 hours.
Oh, welcome and salutations, Ptaah, my friend. I have just finished these corrections here, and Ava is also just about 5 minutes ago over to the apartment and went to bed. So we are undisturbed.
Greetings also to you, Edward, my dear friend. I am anxious to have a little talk with you, and in a private way.
Of course, but I would like to burden you with some questions. But we can also postpone that until later, so that we can devote ourselves to the private sphere first. It can also be the other way around, so we can talk privately first and then get to the questions and answers.
There is nothing wrong with that, therefore I will then begin.
Excuse me, I have to go out for a walk and see if everything is all right. I also have to check on the fire in the stove. It will probably take me about 10 minutes before I get back.
This is not a problem because I know how to keep myself busy in the meantime. Go ahead.
I am back. The stove fire is fine because Madeleine looked after it. There was a bigger animal in the yard outside. When I crossed the parking lot and came to the end of the shed, it ran away and disappeared in the garden, of course, because someone opened the garden door and left it open. This seems strange to me, because it is doubtful that one of our people did this, so it must have been a stranger. Since I did not have a torch with me, I phoned Bernadette and called Silvano, who also came quickly and searched the garden. There was not one animal to be found, but there were large paw prints, which obviously came from a lynx. As I said, the open gate seems strange to me. Are there strangers there again, working maliciously again? I could imagine that some people are not happy with my new book, God Delusion. But now we can talk again.
I also thought of this possibility. But let's turn to what we have already talked about.
So then it is okay with Poppy and Conrad, just like you said a long time ago when Olga got back in touch with us. Bernadette and I have already arranged this, so we only have to present it to the group next Saturday evening. We will also sort out the issue of Atlantis as an intermediate between the core group and the other group next Saturday and see if the group members agree. Then everything will be in order. But please, Ptaah, excuse me. It is already 23:50 hours, and I have to leave again to see if the night watch is coming or already on duty. As you know, that is also one of my duties. If the night watchmen do not arrive, I have to get them out of bed by phone, which is very rare.
Go ahead.
Here I am again. Piero is on the job.
We have been at the things of the during our conversation. And as for the 3 pieces of branches that Florina picked up from you, I examined them closely and found that they were very heavily contaminated with a leaf poison, which is also very dangerous for human beings and is not only harmful to health, but in a certain amount can also have a lethal effect. The poison quickly caused the 3 different ornamental trees to wither away.
So the 3 trees in front of the house were indeed sprayed with a leaf poison, which killed them in a very short time. That is what I suspected. A sheer malice because someone did not like the bushes. A lot of strange people often pass by the house. And to spray the plants, that is quickly done, although there is also not always someone of us in front of the house. Your statement now reinforces my suspicion that malicious people are at work. Therefore, we will have to be more careful and keep our eyes and ears open again. Now, I still have a few questions that we need to clarify. In the corrections that I had to work on tonight, Christian noted that we both always talk about Germanistikern, but that this profession is correctly called Germanists, although your language experts have a different opinion on this, as you explained to me.
That is correct. Our linguists explain that the scholars of German studies cannot be called Germanists because that is fundamentally wrong. The correct term is Germanistikern because the term is istic and not isten, It is fundamentally wrong to form the ending differently from the main term. Unfortunately, many mistakes are made by German scholars in this regard, also with regard to foreign words that are translated into German.
For me, the case is clear, but whether that is also the case for German studies and all those who make many mistakes in this, and also in other areas of the German language, is another matter. It is well known that the scribes have not allowed themselves to be instructed with regard to the expression respectively, the mode of expression, neither in writing nor in the language, because they stubbornly insist on their know-it-all attitude and do not want to be instructed. This also applies to those who again and again tinker with the written language and reform tried and tested words and their forms, as has also happened again with regard to the German written language.
There is probably nothing more to be said about this.
I also think so. But look here, I wrote this article about placebo and nocebo drugs last Sunday. It was prompted by an article I read about them, but it was extremely banal and pertinent. So I thought that an article was necessary that said a bit more, and that was also based on your explanations that you once gave in a private conversation. If you would like to read it, and tell me if I have mentioned everything correctly, or if there are any corrections to be made.
I would like to do that.
Ptaah reads,
The deadly might of the thoughts and feelings.
Placebo preparations LUT. I will please are dummy drugs that do not contain any medical active ingredients, but which nevertheless cause the same effects in human beings as those that occur with real medical drugs. In other words, human beings are freed from pain, or even cured of their ailments, by dummy drugs respectively placebo preparations. Contrary to placebo preparations are the so-called nocebo preparations LUT. I will harm, which also correspond to sham drugs, etc., and are basically nothing else than placebos, which are usually based on sugar or other harmless substances, and are therefore also called sugar pills, etc. So it can be said that placebo and nocebo preparations are actually the same, but their effects are fundamentally different, depending on what patients think they will get when they take them. Placebo preparations have such an effect, which is beneficial to health and relieves pain, or even has a healing effect, whereas nocebo preparations have exactly the opposite effect. However, when taking nocebo preparations, which are indeed also placebos, negative effects such as pain and suffering, etc., are caused as a result of the negative imagination of the patients. That is to say, exactly the opposite of what happens when taking placebos, which are assumed to be remedies. When taking nocebo preparations, which are assumed to be harmful to health or even fatal, all kinds of pain, suffering, shortness of breath, nausea, and even symptoms of poisoning, dizziness, thirst, hunger, sudden drop in blood pressure, and all kinds of other things appear as a result of the imagination, which can lead to actual death by delusion. The might of the thoughts is always connected with the corresponding feelings, which result from the world of thoughts, and in this combination they form a deadly power, and this also in the relationship when any preparations are taken, which are actually only illusory drugs, respectively, illusory preparations, or illusory substances without active substances, and completely harmless, but which have a negative effect, and are therefore supposed to cause suffering, pain, or death. Thus, for example, human beings who are tired of life can get deeply imagined dark ideas of an impending disaster, or of their own death, which then actually kill them. And if the taking of nocebo preparations respectively of imaginary deadly drugs or other means is connected with it, then the thoughts and feelings effectively work as a deadly power, whereby the self-destruction code in the human body is activated. Such a nocebo effect can also cause real symptoms of poisoning in the body, which can be medically proven, for example. So only the belief, respectively, the delusional imagination that something bad will happen, that suffering and pain or death will occur, can destroy the life of a human being. The nocebo effect is therefore exactly the opposite of the placebo effect, whereby it must be remembered that only the power of bad thoughts, feelings, and ideas, especially when they are delusional, can make a human being ill and even cause him to suffer death. Hypochondriacs also live in such delusions, causing severe psychosomatic suffering processes, but they vehemently deny their hypochondria. It is also a fact that placebo or respectively nocebo preparations demonstrably produce physiological results, and thus their effects can be proven. Thus it can be proven that placebo preparations cause an imaginary positive effect, and nocebo preparations cause imaginary negative effects. If the nocebo is closely examined in those human beings who believe in the negative effect of the preparation, then this is a self-fulfilling negative prophecy. It is also a fact that the imaginary or true knowledge of imaginary or real side effects, as well as bad expectations and imaginations, can have a very bad influence on the health of human beings, making them ill or even killing them. It is a fact that thoughts and feelings exert a tremendous power on the health of human beings, and not infrequently even determine life and death. Fear, gloomy expectations, negative ideas and worries are at least as big a negative and risk factor in relation to physical and mental health as, for example, alcohol, nicotine, and purely toxic substances. This is also proven by the fact that about 60% of all human beings are already suffering from health problems and often feel quite bad when they have to undergo chemotherapy or other treatments that are not exactly pleasant for them, or simply have to undergo a health examination. Their wrong thoughts and the resulting feelings alone make them feel miserable, weak, and ill, even though there is not a logical reason for this purely physiologically. And that this is true is proven by the fact that about 50% of all cold spells are caused by negative expectations as well as fears, worries, and negative ideas. This proves that the mere belief in side effects and effects related to drugs or toxic substances is as powerful and imaginary as fear, worries, bad expectations, and imaginations. The belief, imagination, delusion of effects or side effects of drugs and toxic substances, whether placebo or nocebo, activate warning areas in the brain, which translate as an alarm and cause physical complaints, and even more so, mental and emotional restlessness, and thus also psychological impairment. If the placebo effect triggers health improvement or healing, the nocebo effect has exactly the opposite effect and is harmful to health, dangerous, and possibly even fatal. In this respect, the complicated connections between thoughts and their feelings, the psyche, nerves, and the immune system are of immense importance, as psychoneuroimmunologists have been able to prove for quite some time. The usual suspicious disease triggers such as age, blood pressure, body weight, and cholesterol levels represent a much lower risk than is generally assumed, because it is rather the thoughts and their feelings that are the main cause of physical and health problems. Long-term medical studies also show that human beings who believe themselves to be at risk of a heart attack, respectively without good reason, are 4 times more likely to die from a heart attack than others who are not very concerned about their thoughts and feelings. And with regard to all infarct deaths, American scientists estimate that 5% worldwide are attributable to nocebo effects. In addition to the natural life support instinct, which makes human beings fight for their lives, there is also a self-destruction mechanism within them. This mechanism is, however, deeply buried, but can be activated at any time if the need and situation requires it, in order to escape the absolutely unbearable in a natural way. But if human beings are not powerful enough in their thoughts and feelings and in their will to live, then they can also trigger this self-destruction mechanism through their inability to live and their lack of vitality. And unfortunately, many human beings can fall prey to this incapacity, and therefore many are vulnerable because everything is controlled by the power of thoughts and their feelings. As soon as the thoughts and the resulting feelings become negative and badly overpowering, the psyche and the body capitulate and react with discomfort, with pain, or even with illness. Negative and bad thoughts and their feelings thus create psychological discomfort and even great damage. And these inevitably lead to very dramatic psychosomatic disorders in the human body, which are ultimately expressed in real physical illness and suffering. If you look at the environment of human beings, it is full of hidden nocebo traps, starting with package inserts describing possible or real side effects and effects of drugs and all kinds of toxic substances. And if these descriptions are read by human beings who memorize everything and have bad ideas about it and believe in it, then they actually fall ill with the symptoms described. So the power of thoughts and their feelings alone can cause undesirable side effects of medication, which then corresponds to a nocebo effect. Nocebo preparations can cause almost the most impossible effects, and the consequences can be not only pain, nausea and dizziness, etc., but also confusion, headaches, forgetfulness, constipation, diarrhea, nosebleeds, and tiredness, as well as poor eyesight, etc. However, it also works in the opposite direction with the placebo effect, when sham drugs, etc. are considered good, positive, and health-promoting. Faith, imagination, and delusions have a tremendous power over human beings. And if human beings really believe that they will perish in a certain thing, then this will indeed happen, because those who believe are irredeemably caught up in a delusion from which they can hardly or not at all free themselves, as is also the case with religious and sectarian belief in God. Especially religious or sectarian, deeply believing as well as fearful and worried human beings are susceptible to nocebo effects. The religious and sectarian faith as delusion embodies a particularly powerful nocebo preparation, according to which the world of thoughts and feelings is directed towards ensuring that everything happens as assumed in delusional belief. When we look at human beings, we can see that they are very much influenced by optimism and pessimism, and in this respect they are influenced and dependent on them. Optimism and pessimism are, however, factors that are also expressed psychologically, so placebo effects lead to positive stress relief, while nocebo effects cause psychological stress reactions. So it is also true that the environment, family, work colleagues, parents and siblings, relatives, friends, acquaintances, doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, and even complete strangers can cause a placebo or nocebo effect. And this can happen without the human being affected or benefiting from it noticing anything. But for something negative or positive to happen through a nocebo or placebo effect, the most important tool is the power of the brain, respectively, the power of the thoughts and feelings arising from it. The power of thoughts and feelings is the best pharmacy of life, or the deadliest poison of life destruction. The thoughts and feelings are able to initiate various biological processes in the human being's body, such as also activating or blocking the release of positive or negative messenger substances. Thus, the brain is capable of producing highly effective substances of a positive or negative nature, which are vastly superior to any pharmaceutical preparation or toxic substance. Consequently, the brain can stimulate valuable processes that promote health or cause processes that destroy the organism and life. The entire production of hormones is directly or indirectly controlled by the brain, as well as the control of all bodily functions, the effectiveness of the immune and pain systems, the readiness for action, etc. The thoughts and their feelings of inner attitude therefore have a very great influence on the effectiveness of medicines, toxic substances as well as therapies, etc. And these decide on the individual course of the effects in relation to placebo and nocebo effects. So in the final analysis, it is life and death. Thoughts and their feelings, when considered at their origin, are truly only a mixture of chemicals and electrical circuits in the brain. They are constantly evolving and changing. So it also happens that those regions of the brain which are connected with the healing through thoughts and feelings are stimulated accordingly, and this together with the slumbering self-destruction mechanism which lurks for a suitable opportunity. Therefore, it is also possible that negative, dark thoughts and feelings can kill a human being. Fear, delusion, belief, fear of death, hopelessness and panic inevitably destroy the sensitive balance of the human psyche and body because they make everything sick. The good and bad mental emotional expectations of human beings have an uncanny power and shape reality according to the way thoughts and feelings are. The basic factor that ultimately arranges everything is the psyche formed by the thoughts and feelings, the negative effects of which can actually kill human beings. Just as every biological death has its reasons, so also death by a nocebo effect has its reasons. Fear, panic, and thoughts and feelings has a nocebo effect in relation to a danger attack the immune system respectively, the body's protective shield in human beings. If fear or panic appears, the control center in the brain switches and sends its own defense mechanisms into the blood. This increases the adrenaline level tenfold and the immune system is stimulated to full power. However, if this state is maintained for too long, if the negative expectations and panic remain active for too long, then the strain becomes too great and the system becomes full of holes. This then makes it possible for bacteria, pollutants, and viruses to break through into the body's own immune system, leaving the organism helplessly at the mercy of the attackers. The nocebo effect is not only able to trigger diseases, but it also causes and aggravates pain measurably, so that everything seems much worse than it really is. The pain code of the nocebos is a messenger substance called CCK respectively, cholecystokinin. This is formed in the intestines during fear and panic and triggers a pain reaction in the brain. This process could only be stopped by the messenger substance dopamine, but this is usually not possible if negative and bad expectations, etc., block the production of this protective transmitter, thus turning fear into sheer pain. The nocebo effect does not only affect individual human beings, but also larger groups of human beings can be affected, for example in terms of mass hysteria. This phenomenon, that the nocebo effect causes an epidemic, occurs again and again, especially where people gather in larger groups. Usually, such nocebo epidemics occur particularly frequently in offices, factories, schools, or at events where many human beings gather and are somehow isolated as groups. The symptoms of nocebo are extremely varied and range from allergies, nausea, dizziness and fainting spells, stomach pain, abdominal cramps, behavioral changes and headaches to hallucinations and affective delusions. This is also evident in alleged UFO sightings, where smaller or larger groups of human beings fall into a kind of visionary delusion and see UFOs even though there are none. And this is only because a single person believes to see something and thereby triggers a nocebo effect. As a rule, the symptoms of nocebo start with one individual being for no apparent reason, but they affect others through imagination and cause an epidemic according to the domino principle, because more and more people are drawn into the maelstrom of the nocebo effect in rapid succession. If symptoms of illness are caused by the nocebo effect, however, no pathogens can be localized, because there are simply not any. Nevertheless, nocebos are infectious under special circumstances, simply by imagination and faith. In this way of imagination and faith, whole masses of human beings can be infected like avalanches, according to which every 10th flu epidemic on Earth is also due to a nocebo effect, because these symptoms are also very contagious in this way. In order to understand this, it must be understood that the human body, and therefore of course especially the brain, is a biochemical pharmacy, and that thoughts emerge from the brain and its consciousness, which create specific feelings. The whole thing is based on various biological processes that are set in motion, including not only healing factors, but also the dangerous self-destruction mechanism, which, if not kept under strong and conscious control, can have a lethal effect. Thoughts and the resulting feelings, which shape the psyche as well as the body of human beings, are very closely connected and always take their toll, whether this is recognized or not. And that placebo and nocebo effects play an immensely important role in this complex is proven by the fact that placebos can really alleviate or even cure, while the dark power of nocebos is as pathogenic as any contagious deadly disease. But the truth is also that the nocebo effect claims far more human lives every year on the entire expanse of the Earth than the greatest natural disasters to date. The opiate and dopamine system in the human brain reacts to nocebos in a way that very quickly becomes life-threatening. The systems are responsible for the body's own pain relief, and if these are disturbed by nocebos, everything gets out of control, allowing the self-destruction code to play out its might. Sim Yas A Silver Star Center, 9th May 2010, 23:57 hours Billy.
What has been written states the existing facts, therefore nothing needs to be changed.
Thanks, then I am reassured. Your androids, you create them with artificial brains, which means that you can produce artificial and viable cells, if I may say so in such a simple way. I would like to know if you know anything about when such artificial life can be created on Earth as well?
This is already being worked on, and the first successes of a preliminary stage have already been recorded. Of course, everything is still in its earliest stages. And until then, when really artificial and viable life can be cultivated, it will still take some time. But the beginning is already done, and sooner or later further success will follow.
I did not know that, because I have not read anything like that in a newspaper, or heard anything on the radio, or seen anything on TV.
For the moment, it is still a secret to the world public, but the secret will be revealed soon.
I am curious about that. But tell me, you as a geologist, physicist, biologist, chemist and zoologist, and which other fields of expertise do you master? What should I imagine? Which unicellular organisms formed the actual foundations at the earliest time, and were responsible for life on Earth? And when was their time, approximately?
Your question probably refers to the stromatolites, because basically they were the actual link from which all life was ultimately formed. The time of the stromatolites was about 3.5 billion 3,500,000 years ago.
And so these stromatolites are the very origin of life on Earth. Did they originate on Earth?
The basic origins were comets and meteors that crashed into the early Earth and brought the corresponding basic life forms and amino acids, etc.
I can imagine, yeah. But unfortunately, the situation today is that not new life is being brought to Earth, but that life that has existed for a long time is being destroyed and wiped out. This is due to the unreasonableness of human beings, who destroy everything by the catastrophic consequences of their crazy overpopulation. In general, the average people on good Mother Earth do not know what enormous damage they are doing to nature and the planet itself with their overpopulation, because they are taken for fools and deceived by those responsible for the world, by the rulers and scientists. The majority of Earth humans are also not aware of the fact that global warming has much worse and enormously catastrophic consequences for the Earth, its nature and for all life, than those responsible officially announce through lack of information. Just think of the huge masses of permafrost, which contain enormous quantities of methane gas, which is released by the thawing and melting of the permafrost, and which is released into the atmosphere. Not only does this further contribute to the climate catastrophe, but many other tremendous things are also happening that call life on Earth into question. The enormous masses of methane gas can far exceed the large quantities of CO2, and thus destroy everything. Through all this, the oceans, their currents and wave formations are also affected in a tremendous and dangerous way, and more cavemen, respectively gigantic and megawaves, are caused. This is in addition to the fact that the atmosphere is also affected in a bad way, but especially its lowest layer, the troposphere, in which the weather processes take place. Thus, storms of all kinds as well as thunderstorms become more and more violent, destructive, and resemble more and more weather processes, as these prehistoric times on Earth. Weather processes and storms caused by the methane gas masses also cause enormous seawater movements, whereby warm water masses reach down to the sea bottom and stir it up. As a result, the vast quantities of methane gas stored in the seabed are released and drift upward, where they are whirled into the troposphere and reach the upper layer of the atmosphere. The consequences of the released methane gas will then be catastrophic.
There is no doubt about it. But now, Edouard, I will say goodbye again if you have no more questions.
I do not have any more for today, no.
Good. Florina and Injana will be anxious to observe your passive general meeting. Then goodbye, dear friend.
See you again, Ptaah. Goodbye, and thanks for your friendship.